Yo, hey, what's going on, everybody? I've got a new chess set to share with you guys, and I'm really excited for making this video because hopefully you guys will get as excited as I am right now. I purchased another chess set here. This is a vintage chess set, about circa 1960s or so, Soviet chess set here that we see. It's kind of a box-shaped chess set. These were very common back in like 1960s, 70s in chess clubs. I purchased this off of eBay approximately maybe about 3 weeks ago. The seller had a pretty large inventory of different chess sets of different times and years and price ranges anywhere from $100 all the way to a couple of $1,000s. The reason why I settled on this particular chess set is because some of the ones that he was selling, the boards were a little bit smaller, so it was more of an analysis chess set. In this particular case, as you guys will see shortly, it is more or less like a tournament chess set, or maybe at least like a chess club chess set. So it's a little bit bigger squares, and overall a really simple design. I think this chess set sent me back to about $170 or so, maybe $180 with shipping. It wasn't that bad, and it came really nicely shipped. Before we dive into looking at this board, I'd like to ask you guys a question. So what do you feel like is the driving force behind collecting some of these vintage chess sets? I mean, you could argue that anybody who is collecting anything vintage is likely to collect it for various reasons. One of which might be due to the financial aspect of it. You might invest a certain amount of money into something that is already old, and maybe your intention is to restore it properly. Or maybe just wait around and sell it later on at a higher price. Or maybe it was something that you purchased knowing that it was selling for lower than it should, and then you could resell it, basically making more money. That is one of the aspects of people that purchase it. The second aspect is nostalgia. So maybe when you were young, you were playing on a chess set that your grandfather passed down to you, or your father, or whoever, and it just happened to be a 1960s vintage Soviet, which wasn't vintage at the time, but it may have been this particular chess set, and now that you're a little bit older, you're looking to find this as a way to sort of bring back that memory, nostalgia, what have you. That's another reason. That's actually one of the driving reasons why a lot of people out there collect a lot of vintage stuff anyway. So for me, actually, the reason why I ended up being interested in this particular chess set, besides the fact that I know that there's a lot of people out there that would hopefully enjoy watching this video, but I was a couple of months ago watching an old Soviet movie, The 12 Chairs, and it had a scene where Ostap Bender, the main character, was playing in this chess club. Now, the movie was made in 1971, or at least released in 1971, and I was paying close attention to all the different chess sets that were shown during that particular scene, and I thought to myself, those chess sets are really quite nice. Now, I was looking through the eyes of me now having all the experience, and so I thought to myself, how hard would it be to maybe purchase a chess set from that time? So I went on eBay. The gentleman that was selling it was selling other chess sets that were of different price ranges, different years, and I ended up settling on this one because it wasn't very expensive. I wanted something that could be practical, and I also wanted something that I didn't spend like a couple of $1,000s and then not being able to even touch it, because I would be so afraid that if something falls apart, it would be a ruined chess set. So I wanted something practical, slightly older, and the most important aspect of why I wanted this chess set is the realization, or at least just the thought process. A 1960s chess set like this was probably played by many people out there over decades. Hopefully it wasn't sitting somewhere in somebody's attic forever, but I'm hoping that over decades it got a lot of use in different tournaments, maybe some notable tournaments, perhaps some clubs around the world, taken places, played, and let your imagination just flow, and know that it's even possible that if you purchase a vintage chess set, depending on the year, the original owner may no longer be alive, and it might have been passed down to the son or the grandson, and eventually was sold off at an auction somewhere. So when you're holding those chess pieces and moving them across the board, Not that we're talking about, you know, metaphysical or anything like that, but it's still kind of neat to think about the fact that these are the same chess pieces that, you know, have been played like over 60 years ago. That's kind of cool. And think about all the hard work and all the mental hard work that went into playing a lot of those games, looking at those particular chess pieces and people battling it out, and, you know, so that's that. It's like buying a piece of history. Just like if you were going to go and walk around on some battlefield somewhere, you know, you're going to, like if you go right now and visit Waterloo, you know, it might look nothing like when Napoleon was, you know, attacking it, but in what, 1815, I think. So things have changed, but if you just close your eyes and let things imagine, you know, you might let your imagination roll and say, I'm holding a piece of history here. So anyways, I don't mean to bore you guys. Let me just move the camera in close, and I'd like to show you some details that I feel like you guys are gonna find helpful. Not only helpful and interesting in this particular video, but if you are like me and you're just starting or beginning to get into maybe collecting some vintage chess sets, I'd like to show you some of the little aspects and considerations that hopefully you guys will find helpful in being able to make your own purchasing decisions later on, okay? The very first thing I'd like to mention while I'm still sitting here is vintage chess sets like this are, well, they're like 60 years old. So the most important thing, okay, the most important thing that I'd like for you, if nothing else, a chess set will age just like anything, just like me, just like you, just like other things. A 60-year-old chess set made out of wood, an organic substance, will eventually dry out and age and possibly start falling apart. Depending on the age, I mean, this isn't made out of, you know, some kind of a plastic. It's wood, and wood dries up, and given that it's already been, you know, like 60 years or so, sometimes things fall apart. Now, I'm not saying that this chess set's falling apart. What I am saying, though, is that when you're looking to purchase a vintage chess set, pay close attention to some of the restorative attempts that may have been made on the chess set, possibly, because it may make your experience of the product that much worse, possibly, you know, because if you're looking to get that original vintage 1960s or 1920s or whatever, your hope is that you're putting in money towards something that will be just the way that it was when it was originally made. I mean, in an ideal world, that's what we want, right? The truth of the matter is it's not going to be like that. It's just not. It's not possible. So what is possible, though, is that as it ages and as it's starting to fall apart, maybe somebody that's knowledgeable in proper restoration techniques is going to do a really fine job in restoring it in such a way that we don't perceive that restoration has been done. And that's harder to do. And sometimes techniques are done to restore a product, as you will see here shortly. Possibly that will make you think, oh boy, you know, this chess set's definitely been restored. I mean, some things have been changed, maybe some things have been substituted. Definitely a lot of restoration, successful or not. You will be the judge of that here in just a second. So, secondly, you know what this chess set smells like a little bit? It smells like an old antique store combined with an old book. You know, like really, really old book, and you open them up and they smell kind of musty. And it also smells like armpits a little bit. So, I don't know, armpit smell, like really kind of, it's a pungent smell a little bit. I think it's airing out by now, but when I originally got it and I opened it up, it had that like strong smell, like it was in some kind of a factory, like a gym sock factory or something like that. Strong smell. Still, some in the corners, there's a little bit of a strong smell. So where is that smell coming from? Well, they could have used some kind of a, maybe possibly tried to use some kind of a wood staining recently, or maybe within the past decade, that had a kind of a strong smell. Then they decided to maybe do away with it because maybe the stain didn't take as well, as you'll see here in just a second. So let me just move the camera in closer and show you what I'm talking about. This particular chess set's kind of made in this sort of box fashion. It's got this folding board with these little tiny hooks, and we're gonna get back to the hooks in just a second, but got these little tiny hooks, and then it sort of opens up like a box. Here we open it up, and then inside we see the chess pieces. As you can see, on neither side of this particular inside we see any type of felt or anything like that. We also don't see any, like the iChess1 board, for example, it had that little space where you could put the pieces, and it had spaces for the individual pieces. Well, we don't see none of that here, okay? We just see space for your chess pieces, okay? And the chess pieces just lay kind of the way that they lay right over here and sort of knock into each other, which is not ideal by any means, but it is what it is. We'll get back to the chess pieces here shortly. Let's take a look at the actual box board. Okay, you can see that the color of the top here is a little bit different than the color of the sides. I have a feeling, and I'm not Sherlock Holmes or anything like that, but I have a feeling that over the years there have been attempts, maybe not entirely successful, but attempts to stain the wood again after the fact. And it looks to me like the staining's been done relatively okay on the sides, and you can see on this side, on the back. I almost don't like to move this chessboard around too much, because every time I hear this, I feel like the finials are gonna break off, but there we have it. And then here too, you know, not too bad. However, on top here, if we look closely, we kind of almost see like at some point staining was attempted, and then they decided to remove the staining, okay? In fact, I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see that little bit of a detail, but if I move this around back and forth, or if I try to bring it closer, you might not be able to see it, unfortunately. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. You know what? This surface here looks like it's been sandpapered. And when I look at like the light on the side like that, it looks to me like what they did is they tried to stain it. It didn't look good, and then they went back and then they sandpapered everything, okay? They probably thought about, let's try to do that and then we'll restain it, and then they decided, you know what, it's not worth it, it's not that expensive of a chess set anyways, let's just leave it the way that it is. Another thing that I see is that you guys might not be able to see here, but I think there may have been notation on the sides before. And if I, Lord have mercy. Okay, there, look. See that? What is that? Right there. Does that look like maybe a letter? Or this one right here? There, I feel like there has been, and look, that to me looks like a 1. If we turn it over, yeah, look, that looks like a 1. And then maybe notation wasn't initially on this particular chess set. Maybe somebody, after they purchased it, just took a pen or something and they wrote down the notation. So that is a possibility, okay? But after the fact, somebody took a sandpaper or something, just went in there, and like I said, you guys might not be able to see it from the angle that you're looking at it, but if I shine this towards the window like this, maybe, here we go, and you look close enough, you might be able to even perceive that there's these like circular scratchings here. You can almost see somebody took some sandpaper and used his hand to just sandpaper it. So that's that. So there was an attempt possibly at some point, maybe not recently, but at some point there was an attempt to restore it. And then they just sort of like kind of gave up. They were like, you know what, forget it. Secondly, right over here, these little hooks that we see. The way that the hooks are designed, in my opinion, is they're not really designed to exhibit quality of the chess set per se overall. This little part right here is just like, it's a nail, and the nail is just like driven into the wood. Which if I was constructing a chess set from start to finish, I don't know if I would have used glue or maybe some kind of a screw or something, but I wouldn't take just a regular nail and hammered it like whatever, you know, spot. It looks like it just doesn't look nice. It doesn't look nice at all. And then the way that it goes in here is just, you got to kind of work it, and then you're able to put that hook around there. Same here. Now this hook is kind of light, but it still holds. And in my opinion, now I might be wrong, but these hooks look newer than the rest of the board. So I feel like possibly at some point the original hooks or the original clasps or whatever they were, they may have broken, and then they decided, you know what, we're just gonna put something in there so the board can close. So, which is fine. If this was somebody's chess set, then they had to do what they had to do to continue using it. So it's just that I just don't feel like these were the original hooks. Okay, so now if we look closely, two is, I feel like, see how on the very top here there's like a little indentation here, so I feel like there may have been some other latching device beforehand, possibly. So that's what we have here. Now on the back side of this, we have the hinges that are right here. They are slightly outside of the actual board, so they're just kind of normal hinges there. And here on the outside, they do look a little bit darker. Possibly maybe what they did is they stained everything, and then the hinges kind of took on a little bit of a darker stain. But if we go inside of the board, okay, the hinges on the inside actually are light. So let me just kind of, there we go. The hinges are light, and they're made just very rudimentary, like very rudimentary design. Nothing special, nothing that screams quality. The other hinge is right up there, and then the overall, like if you look at the board here, and you like this, you move it around, there's definitely a little bit of give. So like if we keep this, so either the hinges could use a little bit of tightening, or maybe replacing the hinges altogether. I don't know. The inside wood also here, as you guys can see, right over here there's a big stamp. Okay, now what the stamp says, for any Russian speaking people here, it says "Мебельный комбинат", so that it's probably some kind of a furniture factor, Fabrica factory number 2. And then I don't really know what it says, some other stuff, somebody signed something. So what happens is they probably just stamped this on every chess set, and then somebody just like quality controlled it, signed it off on it, and then good to go. On the very top here, it's actually really hard to see, but the very top right here, I think it says Lvovsky. Maybe, I don't know if it says Lvovsky, if you guys can pause it. Lvovsky. I don't know. Wherever this particular chess set has been manufactured, they must have had these individual little stamps. They stamped the chess set, and off we go. These squares have some mismatching here. Like look at this mismatch here, and a little bit of mismatching here, but not terrible. If we look closely, look around, there's a little bit of mismatching right here. So it's not really evident when we look from afar, but it is a little bit evident. So right over here is a little crack right here. If we look right here around the corner, and we look at this part right here, do you see that there's a different coloration to this part right here? I think that these squares here are just veneered onto the wood. What do you guys think? All you guys vintage chess collecting experts out there, chime in and comment and let me know what you think. My best guess is that the way that this particular chess set has been constructed is that a box was made originally in this particular shape. These pieces here, and then they end right here, were thin pieces of veneer that were essentially glued onto the side. This was glued, and then the individual squares were placed, okay? Otherwise, we would not have discrepancies like this, okay? It seems to me like wherever it was made, the squares were probably not identical. And so I'm sure when they were making these chess sets, when they were putting them together, because there was a little bit of discrepancy in the way these veneer pieces were cut, sometimes you ran into the risk of slight mismatch. And it was okay if it was within you know, the boundary, but they were just essentially, I think what they were doing is they were gluing one piece next to the other piece, just like this, on top of this little box, okay? That's, I think, what they were doing. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just kind of what I want to show you. Also, look at the splotchings. Like, if you look at the splotchings here, look at this. Look at this. Does this to you look like possibly some failed attempts at staining? Maybe previous staining that didn't take properly? Because in order for something to be stained well, I feel like what needs to be done is it has to stain evenly. And the way that things stain evenly is the wood, if the wood is able to absorb the stain evenly. But if it's not, it could absorb it in splotches. So I'm not an expert on staining wood. I know there are some people out there that are, and they can always comment and let me know. So let's dive in and look at the pieces. The pieces is probably what a lot of people came here for. These are the actual pieces. They're not super big. They are not heavy. They're actually not weighted. This is the knight, okay? I was specifically looking for a chess set that, at least on the pictures, didn't look like it was altered. So I was a little bit disappointed to find that the actual box seemed to have been altered, but the pieces, from what it looks like, were not. Maybe just they didn't bother to do it, but you could see there's some degree of wear. And on the bottom we have this really thin felt that looks like kind of dark blue felt right over here. Yeah. On the inside here, we can look what's on the inside, because some of the felt on some of the pieces is actually starting to come off. Here's a rook, and I'll show you guys here these pieces in just a second, but yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of separation here on the inside. So if we take a slight bit of this, and I'll probably just glue it back in. Yep, we have just a little. I think what happens is that all these chess pieces, and I felt on the inside, I think, see how it has that little hole there? I think what the hole is they were putting some kind of a screw or some kind of a mount to keep this piece while it was turning. So while they were making the chess piece, they had to screw something in so that it would hold while it was turning, and then they would just pop it off. That's kind of why we have that little hole in there, okay? The felt, in my opinion, based on today's standards, is kind of thin, but then again, you don't have the extra weight inside of the pieces, so there might not be such a need for heavy felt. These pieces are very light. In fact, I'll weigh them here in just a second with you guys. They are pretty light. Another thing that I'd like to show you guys is like this. This is the light knight. We'll look at the shapes and stuff here in just a second. But the other knight actually, if we look at the, look at this. Do you see what I see? Do you see right over here, a little bit right next to the base of that? Do you see how it shines a little bit differently? And like around here too? If we just shine it slightly around for you guys, you will maybe notice what I'm talking about. So I feel like this particular knight, the light knight, this part came off, basically is what I'm trying to tell. And I think what happened is they glued it back in there, but they didn't wipe off the excess glue. And so now you can see it. It's part of the restoration processes. You know, if you gotta restore them, you gotta restore them in such a way that people don't know that you restored them. Let me just switch the angle around so you guys can see the pieces on the board and everything. In this particular chess set, you will only get 2 queens, one light and one dark. The finials are a little bit unusual for these particular chess sets, but not too unusual for Soviet chess sets. Now, finials, I've read a lot about different finial designs in that time period. A lot of times what I've seen is finials sometimes will just stick up straight, and in some instances they are very narrow at the very top, but they actually diverge out. So in this case, this particular design, the finial is made out of wood, a different color wood from the rest, and it's glued into the top of the king here. It's made out of wood and it's conical here. I'm actually surprised, for as slender as the finial is, that it has not yet chipped off. Possibly that they may have been replaced too over time. I don't know what's the likelihood of these finials breaking off in a box like that, with you just sort of walking around with those chess pieces bumping into one another, but it is what it is. Later on, I read that the Soviet chess pieces, I think after like 1970s, they start making them plastic to save money and to save on costs. They did away with the wooden ones, but this is wooden. So we see a design here, a relatively narrow king, actually for a wooden chess piece. These are pretty narrow and very light. Okay, in fact, my trusty weight scale here will 8 grams, so super light. But due to the large bases that we see here at the very bottom, they're still somewhat sturdy. Yeah, they do wobble, but they're not really likely to fall. And, you know, the base is really large. Then we have the queens here on the sides. The queens are made they don't really have those little spikes that we're so used to seeing on the top. They just have this sort of just a flatness over here. In fact, they have like a couple of elevations. They have this little altering color, little nipple on the very top here, and then we have like a little semicircular dome that goes into this other elevated area here. Drops down, we have these rings here, similar to the 3 sets of rings we see on the king, and then it has kind of a very similar rest of the body as to the king. So it's normal to see that the form factor from the king will replicate in the other pieces, as we see here. So that way the chess set feels like it's been made together and not just out of random pieces. As far as the weight, the queen is 9 grams. So 8 grams for the king, 8 grams for the king, 9 grams for the queen. I don't know how a queen that's shorter than the king actually ends up weighing more, but it is what it is. Then we have the bishops. Bishops actually don't have the little cut as we've used to seeing. There's no cut through the top. We just have this little tiny little pancake here at the very top, and then a very normal symmetrical bishop. If it wasn't for the fact that these are so slender here, with such wide sort of, they're just wide barrel-like bases. It's really interesting to see. Weight-wise, actually 10 grams. So the bishop here weighs more than the rest of the pieces. That's the dark bishop, and here's the light bishop, about the same height. And of course, height-wise, the king's going to be the tallest. The queen a little bit shorter, but the queen and the bishop actually are very, very similar in height. For all those people that are not super happy when the height of the bishop kind of starts to encroach upon the height of the queen. There you go. It is what it is. Okay. The chess sets are not very big, so I can actually probably manage to put them all here on one board. The knights are a little bit rudimentary, more or less. There's there's the ears here at the very top, kind of pointing up. It looks more like almost like I don't know, like a Doberman instead of a knight, but it is just with the pointy ears. Or maybe it kind of looks like one of those little Sphinx figures with the front looking the way that it does, but it is what it is. So not a whole lot of details. I don't in fact see, there is a little bit of what looks like an eye maybe drawn past after the manufacturer, kind of taking a pen and just drew an eye in here. We do have a slight open mouth, just like with a single cut. And the base here is large, and then I feel like, yeah, the top portion is made separately, and then it's glued into the bottom part here. So it's not made of one piece. At least that's my assumption. Weight-wise, actually 12 grams, so we're moving up. We'll see how heavy the Rook is, but 12 grams. This was, I think, 10 grams, 9 grams, 8 grams. We're moving up in the world, okay? Then we've got the Rooks. I've already shown you guys the Rooks. Here they are. Rooks actually are devout of there's no cuts in the top of the Rook part here. Just kind of a very, very shallow depression in the very top here. And I kind of like the Rooks. I think that the shape of them is very sort of minimalistic. And they're kind of, you know, they're characteristics to the rest of the chess set. But I've seen these around in that time period, so it's not bad. It's not bad. And then the weight of the Rooks is 11 grams. So 11 grams. Everything is sub 13 grams. It's good. It's good. It won't be too burdensome for you to carry a chess set around like this. It's at least that part is very light. Finally, we got the pawns. Okay, these are the pawns here. Pawns are kind of small. This top portion here is small, but it's still manageable. You don't really have any issues with being able to pick it up, or, you know, having like, this could be a little bit bigger in my opinion, but it is what it is. At least the base part is pretty much same with the rest of the chess pieces. As you see, all the bases are made very, very similar, okay? Weight-wise, 6 grams for the light one. 7 for the dark, probably about the same, more or less. So yeah, these are really, really light pieces overall. Let me just set them up on the board and show you guys how everything looks together. Well, I mean, once fully set up, it doesn't look bad. In fact, it has a really nice sort of a vintage feel to it. It's very much so practical, in my opinion. It's not like a chess set, and that's the whole point of me buying this chess set, as I was looking for something that I could actually use in practice. I didn't want to get something that would be like, oh, this is so expensive and it looks like it's gonna fall apart. Now I wanted something like reasonably playable. So something that if somebody came over and wanted to play chess, I would pull out this chess set and wait until the moment they would say, wow, this is an old looking chess set. But I think it's still nice, you know, it's still a reasonably nice chess set, even though the felt on the bottom isn't very big, and every time you pick up and put a chess set down, you definitely have that loud feel. But you know, it's a good chess set. I feel like it's good. It plays well. You can still see all the squares, even though they did the sandpapering and everything. It's still very, very much so a solid looking chess set. Here's a sort of a side view of the same chess set here. It's a nice one, you know. It's not bad. It looks good. I feel like nobody would say, you know, it's not a nice looking chess set. And it still plays. Like I said, my only reservation is given if this is actually like a 60-year-old chess set, as you know, are we to expect things are going to start falling apart? Have things been properly restored? And if so, you know, are these finials going to hold, and how long for? I don't necessarily want to try to restore this chess set any more than it already is. I bought it with an intention of giving it that vintage, sort of an old look. That's what I was going after. I don't necessarily want to like lacquer it now and make it look like it was bought yesterday, because that would just kind of defeat the point of, you know, what I've wanted to achieve with this particular chess set. But yeah, it's a solid chess set. It's a good size. It's a perfect gift for somebody, maybe. It's nice. One thing that I do want to mention is that if for anybody out there that is looking to maybe purchase a vintage chess set, it's very important, in my opinion, to have a reputable seller who will give you as much information as possible on the specific year of manufacture, the place of the manufacturer, somebody that's actually going to be able to give you some history, including, in my opinion, if you're going to pay, you know, any money for a vintage chess set, it would really be nice to get like a specific, almost like a document that says this is where it was made, this is, and a document would be like, you know, more than just a stamp that looks like it's faded away. I mean, obviously with the stamp we kind of get some idea of where it was, but when I was looking at this particular chess set, the seller himself didn't really know exactly where this particular chess set came from. All he knew is that it was made around 1960s. In fact, I inquired, I think after I purchased the chess set, I inquired from the seller. I said, could you please give me some more information about the specific region of manufacture for this particular chess set? Like, when was it made? Anything that you can give me. The seller himself, he said, I don't really have any special information about this chess set, but the, let's see, in the 30s of the last century, in the Vyatka outback in the city of Halturin, now Orlov, and the Международный юношеский день, International Youth Day, first products of the artel were caskets, cigarette cases, pipes made of wood and burls, and already in 1939 the artel workers started production of chess. In 1959 to 1961 merged with the artel Sila labor artel of the disabled Sila organized whatever, and became known as the Halturinskaya factory of cultural goods. Okay, that's about all he sent me. So vague information about possibly the factory somewhere in the Halturin region, which is now Orlov. Okay, however, here it says Lvovsky. It doesn't say Halturin. Okay, either way, you know, like I said, if it's important to you to know exactly where the chess set was manufactured, who manufactured it, what year exactly it was manufactured, it might be something that you would want before you purchase the chess set, and you may want to inquire from the seller if they can provide you that information. If the seller is very vague, who knows, they're maybe just getting chess sets from other people, just either donating them, maybe they're running a little goodwill or something, and they may not have information that is specific to your needs. If that's important to you, then look somewhere specifically. I know there are some very reputable chess collectors, people that would know more information about that. So if you are a vintage chess collector and you want to chime in and comment below, let people know where they could go to look for some reputable ones, you know, then by all means make sure you comment below. Either way, I think for the amount of money that I paid for it, I really wasn't expecting to get a gem or anything. I wanted to purchase something that could more or less feel like it was played during the time that my grandfather was young, you know. And 1960s, my grandfather may have been 1934 is when he was born, so he was like maybe 36, somewhere between maybe 26 to 36, somewhere in that range. So I don't know if my grandfather played much chess, but it would have been at that time. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of neat. I hope that, like I said before, I hope this particular chess set has actually been played by a lot of people. I hope it wasn't sitting on some shelf for many, many years and then just sold off, because that would be kind of sad. This little hook already bent. Lord have mercy. How did the hook bend so easily? Oh, another thing that I probably would want to advise you guys, if you're buying any type of a vintage chess set, 1960s, 50s, 30s, whatever, It may be a good idea. I don't know how feasible, but I've got this little device here. It's actually like a radiation meter. It's a GMC 320 plus. I don't know. Nuclear radiation detector. Okay. So I can set it right next to the chess set. And it's showing us that it's not a radiated chess set. Otherwise, it would have probably been going off right now. There is always some degree of little bit of radiation that's just from the sun and everything. But why would you want this? Maybe you don't need it. But considering some of the old chess sets may have been used on like a submarine, like a nuclear submarine, there's a lot of areas possibly that are a little bit nuclear. You know, you don't know where this chess set came from. My assumption, though, is I wouldn't need this because maybe going through the airport customs and everything, they probably already have their radiation meters over there, and they probably would have stopped it if they picked up any type of radiation on it. But did I buy this thing? No, I've had this for like years, and whenever I buy something old like this, I just run it through to make sure it's not radiated. You'd be surprised, though, like if you're buying, for example, submarine watches by people that have been like on the submarines, you want to be careful with those because they do say that they might be a little bit radiated, and it might be a small amount, but it could be enough to where it would be equivalent to you receiving like 300 x-rays per day or something like that, and you don't want that. You really don't want to. If this chess set had arrived and it was radiated, I would just like probably either burn it or like just immediately throw it into the trash. But no, it's a fine chess set, and yeah. So that's that. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this particular video. Please comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are on this particular chess set, whether you like it or don't like it. Let me know if you are an owner of some vintage chess set. Where did you purchase yours? Did you find the transaction to be acceptable? Did you feel like it was what you expected it to be? Yeah. Hit a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you guys in the next video, okay? Bye-bye.